At the elements of the BBI report as we wait to see the actual details, and the papers are awash with stories about it. And for example, the Daily Nation is telling us BBI, the big changes, and I'd like to just look at the elements that are being pointed out. For example, representation, that Prime Minister post that we might be having, the women representatives, as anxiety comes over, calls for the abolition of that particular seat, and then fighting corruption, and of course the bigger agenda of unity and ensuring that the crisis that happens every other election year is dealt with once and for all. And just a reminder of this guest that I'm having here in studio today. I'm having Arnold Maliba, who's a political analyst, my far left, as well as Steve Ogutu, who is a governance expert, and Brian Hayemba, who's an advocate. Now let's take a talk. Let's talk BBI. Hopefully this is the last day we're talking about this without knowing what's in the report, because honestly I'm sick and tired of the speculation, because we want to know what's in that report, and it has been delayed sort of, but now it's coming out today. Today is the official day, and trending online was the BBI since yesterday. There was the BBI as well as the People's BBI. Quite interesting sentiments came out on Twitter. But let's talk BBI. What's your take on that Prime Minister report, the post that might be introduced with this coming report?
No, first of all, we are only speculating.
Yes, we are.
And the whole country is waiting.
Yeah. It's a hot topic, but based on a report that is yet to come out.
I'm among the Kenyans who are saying that I will read the report and I'll be able to make my own judgment
as the DP has asked us.
Yes, and even the president was on record saying that last week. I saw him speaking that in Kibabi University during the graduation.
Yes.
But most important is if at all it represents the views that we really will take the country to the next level, then we have to support it.
Absolutely.
In my own view is that we are about 10 years since we passed the Constitution.
True.
To me, this is enough time for us to take stock and look at the Constitution and say, really, whether there are certain articles in the Constitution that need to be looked at. Because the Constitution must always speak to the needs of the society.
Yeah.
It's not static. So as the society's needs keep changing, so should the Constitution, so that we are at par. It must dictate how we conduct our business. Yeah. I'm also against the views that we should not amend the Constitution simply because of certain interests of the political class.
Okay.
But again, as I said, if there are provisions that talks about representations, and it is true that this country is somehow overrepresented.
I mean, overrepresented?
Yes, it is. I mean, we cannot have a country of 47 million Kenyans with almost 2,500 leaders in terms of members of parliament, the senators, up the way to the MCS.
Yes.
Globally, the average is that in a country of between 10 to 50 million, the level of representation should be just about
But some would argue, given our diversity, and that also plays to the politics, the chaos that happens, we need someone from every little, you know.
The problem lies with how we share the national cake. So because leadership goes with where the leadership is coming from, that's where most of the national cake will be distributed. But you see now with the coming in of devolution, we are trying to run away from the aspect of where the center of power is, that's where most resources will be. The country now shares the resources equitably in terms of the devolved unit. So it really should not be about of diversity.
Yes.
It should be a question of, are we
the national
having,
pie?
I mean, the wage bill that we have now that goes to the leadership in terms of the political leadership, is it sustainable? Because it's a mockery that we can go to borrow funds to finance the current expenditure and pay salaries to the state officers.
Yes. So we are overrepresented in your view. I can see where you're coming from with that. Now, this our constitution currently was largely borrowed from South Africa, but then, as you say, there's no one size fit all, solutions or systems, because each country has its own unique problems, and post-election chaos is something that we're turning into a a recurrent trend. So it behooves the need for a particular solution for that particular problem that might not be unique, that might be unique to us as opposed to South Africa or whatever other country we would have based our, our constitution on. Now, when you look at page 14 of the Daily Nation, we're told who shall bail the cat, and this has to do with the BBI and that issue of the parliamentary system. So I'd like you, Mr. Ogutu, to comment on the need, or rather no need, lack thereof need of a Prime Minister's post, as well as the assertion that we need a parliamentary system.
Wow, you know, any Kenyan would tell you that the best thing, or the majority of Kenyan would tell you that the best thing that has ever happened to this country post-independence history is the handshake. You know, every election for the past 5 decades has been, marred with, post-poll chaos that has led to loss of lives and loss of property.
At least since 2007. That's
right, and that is not something that we should always want. It's not a situation where we should always want to be as a country. Yeah. And that's why I really support this BBI idea, and I believe majority of Kenyans too do.
But there are those who say you cannot legislate unity.
But you can use certain strategies to unite a country. Every time there is an election in the current system, where every time there's an election, we have a president, and then what happens to the other leaders who also have the majority followers, like the opposition leaders, So I think the idea of having a position of a prime minister and a president position, I think for me, I support it, so that we avoid this issue of winner takes it all. It will help to address some of these grievances and chaos that we see every time we get out of an election, because then we are putting this country into economic stress, and making investors lose confidence in our country, and so it affects the entire functioning of our nation, and so I believe if we look at it objectively, BBI is a very great idea, and I think, in my opinion, I dare say that anybody who objects BBI is somebody who doesn't have Kenyans at heart. Especially analyzing, reading the concept itself. I had a chance to read, the 9-point agenda, and the president and the right honorable prime minister laying very clearly where we've come from, where we are, and where we need to go in terms of growing, our country, and so I believe that this should be supported by any Kenyan of goodwill.
So what about the possibility of a parliamentary system as opposed to how things are right now?
I think that I know people have different views about it, but in my opinion, I think it's a good idea that should be supported.
Okay. Yeah.
Though I know my colleagues here may disagree with me. And by the way, I'm not holding brief here for anybody.
Well. If you say so, that's how we'll take it. Yeah. Mr. Maliba, what's your take?
First of all, I do not think there will be a miracle that will show up from BBI.
BBI report.
And for obvious reasons. We saw the 9-point agenda.
Yes.
They were not anything plucked from something we do not know. They are part and parcel of the constitution, the current constitution we have. And BBI, in my opinion, is not a bad thing to start with. It's a good process. But it should not directly plunge into the reviewing of the constitution. Like Advocate Haemba said very well that 10 years after we took on a new constitution, it's a good time to actually do stock taking. BBI was not stock taking of the constitution. Yeah. I would expect that BBI proposes further a constitutional audit to look at the instrument that we took upon ourselves as a country to use as a a tool for management of our public affairs,
right,
but not necessarily to go into directing that these and these should be done. I think that process in itself was a little bit divisive, so it should propose further stock taking or rather an auditing of the Constitution as per the proposals that are being put out there.
Yes.
You know, if you look at all the questions that BBI is trying to answer are the questions the Constitution 2010 process was trying to answer.
Yeah.
And nothing they are talking about is not in the National Accord. Literally, if you hear the talk is so much about Agenda 4 of the National Accord. So if Agenda 4 of the National Accord did not find its way home in the Constitution 2010 appropriately, then we need to look back and then ask, what exactly happened? Where did we drop the ball? And I will still go back to something that we don't want to talk about. If we talk about the biggest problem in this country is not about now currently the winner takes it all, but a center that does not want to accept a new constitutional order. He spoke about being overrepresented. We are not. There is a third tier of government that has totally been killed.
Yeah.
Of course, we talk about 2 levels, but there is a third one. There's an element of decentralization actually brought in by the Urban Cities and the Urban Areas and Cities Act that somehow devolved governments have literally killed that particular element. But it was an attempt in decentralizing and ensuring that services are well delivered. That bit has not really been worked on. So still, we are not overrepresented. Look at the budget. We have got a budget, currently we've got a budget of about 3 trillion. Out of the 3.1 trillion shillings, the judiciary, the whole of devolution, and the legislature take not more than 450 billion. What no one is asking is where 2.6 trillion shillings is going. We are all being told that we are overrepresented, these guys are taking a lot of money. But you see, the money the governor, the MCAs, plus the good work we see on the ground and the graft that we are being told, it doesn't go beyond 300 billion shillings. This particular year, they are getting 318 billion shillings. So for all that, and we have consistently had budgets that get into trillions, and I'm using this particular example, like this particular financial year, 3.1 trillion shillings. Only 450, and austerity is actually bringing that lower. No one is asking where 2.6 trillion shillings is going. Of course, we will talk about 600 billion shillings going. So we'll talk about 600 billion shillings going to servicing the national debt. 450 billion shillings taking care of the salaries. But still, there is 1.2 trillion shillings that the national government has had continuously for the last about 3-4 years. And no one asks those questions. Parliament that we keep on saying are taking a lot of money. They've never had 40 billion shillings. That is less than 2.6%.
Right.
So in this particular year, they got the highest from 38 billion shillings last financial year to this particular year, which is 43 billion shillings. Still, that is less than 2.5% of the national budget. So now, talking about BBI proper, number one, I think that I belong to that group that are a bit pessimistic.
The people's
of course, this
BBI?
I would, but I want to be very pragmatic in the sense that I need to look at the document, read it, think over it, and then make my decision, because this is honestly what I believe. Most of the proposals that are being bandied around can actually be taken care of through administrative means and not necessarily through constitutional change. A lot of them.
Yes.
Two, if you're going to come up with the Prime Minister's position, what changes? The state capture, the state of our state capture will not change, because the same vultures that know how to go around engineering government and taking it and running away with it are not different. Yesterday I saw a cartoon in The Nation talking about monkeys that are now jumping from it's the same monkeys running from one forest, that is the Constitution 2010, now going to BBI. The mischief in that forest will remain the same.
Yes. Mr. Ogutu, you're burning with it.
I want to respond to the point he raised, that, all these points that are being, the 9-point agenda, are things that are not new. They've been there in the Constitution, and they're not strange things to Kenyan. But I think what I think we need to get clear here is, we've never been in a situation where the leader of opposition and the president of a country, work together. I mean, there is enough goodwill to address some of these issues.
And that is very dangerous, by the way.
What?
The leader of
Dangerous for them?
opposition,
Yes.
when the opposition, you can't tell the difference between the opposition
And the
And government.
government in a presidential system, then we are dead, we are on our own. And by the way, it is not sin or bad to be within the opposition.
Yeah.
There's a reason why these things were engineered that way. So please,
Yes.
run with that, but I'll get back.
But I do see your point. Ideally, they should hold the government.
I get his
yes.
point about, there's need to have opposition to hold the government accountable. I mean,
Right.
that's very good. But the point that I'm trying to drive from is we've had lots of some of these issues of national unity, corruption happening, and these issues that have become a thorn in the flesh, in our society. And the reason why these issues have not been solved over time is because we've never had, political goodwill from both sides.
Okay.
What we've had is sometimes maybe the government says we want to do this, the opposition says no, this is not the way we want to go. But for the first time, we've seen them working together. And so that's why I think pessimists like my friend here
Yeah.
should just join us, join the
BBI.
No, that's propaganda.
and stand on the Kenyan side.
I
Because
like
I believe what the BBI is talking about is actually the people's
The current BBI is the people's BBI. There's no difference in your view.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like you to finish your point on the importance of...
You know, why I still feel, and I think the guys who have been running BBI are very good students of propaganda. There's the bandwagon technique they are using. Everybody else is doing it. If you're on the other side, you are the only other person who's not doing it. It works very well. The big lie concept, that the problems we have can actually be solved by a handshake. That is nonsense in my opinion. It cannot. Why didn't the handshake happen much earlier?
But one would argue that's why we are going towards
I would
a
actually tell you that the handshake
referendum.
was a good gesture.
Yes.
I know democracy, our democracy is still
Fledgling.
Yeah.
fledgling, and it's on its way to probably maturity. But then show me any jurisdiction that has got a democracy that will say it's beyond some levels of tautology and the things that happen around here.
Yeah,
so long as there's
yes.
politics will always be politics.
Yes.
So I still believe that BBI, BBI will not solve the mismanagement of government for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
It's not talking about that. In fact, for me, I feel that BBI is a blindfold that is actually being given to us so that we do not look at the hard times that we are going through. There is no money in circulation. Look at the austerity. When government starts raiding the reserves, asking parastatals to bring back money, they are getting very creative. See what happened at the University of Nairobi yesterday. It's all in an attempt to people trying to make use of the little money that is there. The question should be, where has all the monies we've used to go to? About 12 trillion shillings
Yes.
for that time that we've been around here. The point is that BBI is good, like I said. Every product has got an opportunity to have a PIP, product improvement program. So the BBI should be a PIP for the constitution. But the way it's being done and bandied around like it's the silver bullet, that it's going to take care of everything, it's not true. If we do not have a political goodwill,
Which is there.
that political goodwill cannot be left to two individuals. We are a country of 47 million people, for heaven's sake. We cannot limit the will, and I'm talking about the free will of individuals, to just two people.
Mr.
You
Haimba,
are going to put aside a few people, and they're already revolting. See what they're talking about, the People's BBI Report and the others.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Haimba, I'd like your take on this. The BBI, is it being termed as the silver bullet, the solution to all our problems, and is that an unrealistic bar to set for that particular report?
As I said, since I don't read the report, I don't say that it is a solution.
Yeah, but you do know about the problems that we have.
But of course, it might not be a solution to all the problems that we have as a country. But I want to point out one thing that, as Mr. Ogutu says, the issue of us not having an opposition is dangerous as a democracy. Giving out of premium to the presidency has got its own challenges. We need to have that kind of system where we have checks and balances,
Yes.
and we have another alternative seat of power, so that at least powers are distributed instead of being centered at one particular person, because it's subject to abuse. Then there will be no issue of checks and balances in Parliament.
Yes. And ideally, Parliament should play that role, right? Yeah, but then we have been told that our Parliament has turned into, just choirs.
Yes.
So, to your point.
Exactly. But I also agree that the way the mystery is being created around BBI, it actually prepares the ground for rejection. Because you read the papers that a few people are being picked from the counties.
Yeah, invites have been sent out.
Some MCAs, at least 20 from each and every county. Nobody knows the criteria, and nobody knows who is even funding them. And they're being brought to Bomas to discuss, or rather to receive
the report
on behalf of the Kenyans. You know, that's something that creates an environment for people to have negative attitude about it. And it can easily be run away by the politicians. And the problem is that majority of the few of us that may want to read before we make a decision, actually may have no say, because we have got quite a number of Kenyans who may not read it.
Yeah.
They will wait for their political leaders to say,
to come and interpret
we
it.
have read for you, this one is good, then we vote for it.
Yes.
That's the danger. But we must look at it critically and see this document, whether it represents the views that will take the country forward or not.
Right.
But you look at even Parliament itself, there are several pending bills brought on the floor of Parliament to amend this constitution. Right now, I've just been reading somewhere where there is a proposal to amend the constitution, Article 90 of the Constitution, so that the presidential losers and their running mates are actually nominated to Parliament. So there have been attempts by Parliament
to
amend the Constitution. But we will have to look at Article 255 and see the provisions that are actually safeguarded by the Constitution that can only be amended on the floor of the House.
Absolutely. Now, I like that you've pointed out about the people who have been invited to, come and receive said report, because there's a story that is in the paper today. DP's men are saying we have not been invited to receive this report. And yesterday we had a quote-unquote Tangatanga MP saying, if this report is not speaking to the needs of the people, we want nothing to do with it. Also, there's room to interpret what we mean by the people's needs.
I don't understand what other people's needs Tangatanga is talking about, other than, unity, which is being proposed by the BBI, other than tackling corruption to create more jobs and grow our economy, which is being proposed by the BBI. So I think they're just trying to play politics around it.
Right.
But I think we need to look at this whole issue objectively, like I stated before, and see, where we've come from. And actually, like you said, maybe BBI might not address all the issues that the Kenyans are facing, but at least it's going to address some of these critical issues that have been that have been affecting this country, for the longest time, over the past 5 decades. And as for the people who've been invited to go and receive the BBI report, I don't think...
Does it even mean anything?
I don't think there's anybody who's been stopped from going.
It's a question of interpretation.
I don't think there's anybody who's been
stopped from going to Bonas. I'm sure you can just show up.
You can show up, go and
the roads will be barricaded. You can't go near that.
No, not really.
It's a presidential event.
Yes, you cannot just...
And it's an invite event, there's space that is limited. At Bomas, if it was an open event, they should actually have put it at Kasarani,
the stadium.
Or Uhuru Park.
Where we promulgated, it was at Uhuru Park.
But even besides that, this is just the president and the people's president receiving the report. And then tomorrow, we will have the public now having the more digested version of it.
It might just be a symbolic event, basically.
Yeah, it's just a symbolic event today. And that's why they've invited, elected leaders from across the country.
Except
MCAs
these ones who are complaining that they have not been...
And some of them actually got it at some very funny level, where a fellow member of parliament is inviting you. You know how it feels? Almost like a village level. Anyway.
That's why I'm saying it might be just a ceremonial.
Part of it is actually the big thing, because for politics, perception is everything. Perceptions and framing.
Yes.
So the symbolism of actually even trying to call people from every county is that we are all present.
Yeah.
And that all our leaders need to actually feel like they actually belong to this process. That symbolism is everything, including the president being the symbol of national unity.
Yes.
It's a serious thing. So we shouldn't make it very light. But he spoke about unity. Can we talk about the unity of who and the unity of what? So, you know, when you talk about that we are only united when a few people are united. So, because literally we are seated here, we come from different backgrounds. We are not killing each other. We work together. And this country is where it is largely because of the efforts and the industry of the people of Kenya. Not so much for what the leadership has actually done for this country. It's for what we people wake up every morning with our own drive, ambition, and patriotism and commitment to both our individual needs and what the nation needs. So when you talk about unity, like I asked, the unity of who? And the unity of what? So the unity of purpose here, that there is only unity when people are actually congregating to it. You know, Hillary got more votes than Trump.
Yes,
and the Americans are not murdering each other and they're not pushing each other. We must get to a level. Of course, it's about the cost of our politics. Because people put in a lot of money and then to sit out for 5 years feels too costly. We need to work around that. But again, it's the same parliament and our leaders who want shortcut to leadership that make it that way. So I would still believe that this issue about the goodwill of the opposition and government working together, he has actually poached us. There's no alternative voice. We lost parliament a long time ago. But in the architecture of the constitution, when we were making it, we did away with a lot of powers that made the presidency imperial, gave the judiciary sweeping powers and to act freely as they were. The principle of separation of powers working very well. That is why we didn't even want members of the legislature showing up in the executive as ministers. It was to ensure that there is a clear, that principle works out effectively. But along the way, the executive poached the legislature. We will talk about that another day. That is the case of CDF. Because CDF is dependent on how much the executive spends.
Basically.
So it's limited to at least 2.5%. So they didn't care however much these guys spend, so long as their 2.5% will always rise in volume depending on what they spend. And then the tyranny of numbers and everything else. Essentially and practically, we wouldn't need an opposition in a jurisdiction where parliament is functional and working effectively.
And questioning certain decisions.
Because what is oversight? What is the representation? Is that when I'm seated at home, my member of parliament is able to represent me. There is that voice.
Speak to my needs.
So going back to this BBI thing and what they're trying to do and everything around this, we have seen this before. There was the National Accord and we were very united because literally there was no one. And as we came to an end, we got to where we are today. The problem with the BBI is that it has been fashioned to look like it is against a few people. And that is the genesis. And you see, they didn't have a problem. It is them being told on platforms that
the same politicians.
This one will sweep you away. This one will teach you the fear of God. You know, there are such like things, the things that are actually making BBI. And it is easy to underestimate what some other people can do. There is that official feeling. Like at the moment, we are struggling with how to make our ends meet. People are even bringing down rent. Money is not flowing. The economy is collapsed. We have got a ballooning wage bill. And the government is clueless about it. But people are telling us, forget about that. That we should live like birds. Ndege za Mungu. We don't care about tomorrow because BBI is here. And it will take care of everything. It can't just work that way.
Mr. Haimba, you take...
It can't.
Listening to Mr. Ogutu. Yes, it is true that they cannot offer solution and bring food to the table. It can never, and that was not the intention. The politics of BBI, of course, will start today after the official handing over. We expect that to be published. We don't expect anything else short of that.
Of course.
But once it be handed over today, because actually there's FIFA high pitch now, people want to read that.
Everybody wants to get their hands on it.
Yes, but most importantly, there are certain aspects that are being told that will be covered in the BBI. I've heard about the issue of fighting corruption, so that they enhance and strengthen the institutions of fighting corruption.
Right.
And if that is really the case, then I must support it, because I just want to refer to one issue.
Actually, the corruption bit is quite, you know...
It's covered, that's what we understand, under the nine-point agenda, the BBI. You look at Chapter 6 of the Constitution, the Integrity Code, and the intention, the objective was that the Kenyans wanted to have leaders that are beyond reproach.
Yes.
That once you've been accused of integrity-related issues, then you don't need to hold office.
Yes.
You're automatically out of office.
Yes, step aside.
But here we have a case whereby we have got a governor who is facing murder trial, but is still in office, because that's a constitutional office.
Yes.
You see, we must have clear provision that once you've been charged, whether you are holding a constitutional office or not. Because the way the architecture of the constitution is set now, you cannot tell the governor to step aside.
Yes.
It's against the constitution. But again, we have
There's chapter 6 that...
Exactly.
Yes.
The governor for Nairobi, Mike Sonko, was on record, was on national TV, telling Kenyans how he was jailed, he ran away from Shimolatewa and what have you. It has taken us
7 years, I think.
Yeah.
How long?
Yes.
Years and years.
It is now when now ESCC is trying to investigate and now take action against the governor for having lied to the IBC and the ESCC during submission of papers when he was contesting. Now the question is this, because if it has taken all this time, when this person was on national TV making those kind of statements and those kind of statements, the first thing you should ask yourself is, where was IBC? Because IBC was clearing candidates to contest. It was cleared with all this. And what kind of investigation? Because right now, actually, I can also agree with people who are saying that the governor is being, this witch hunt for the governor.
Because suddenly Shimolatewa has noticed that somebody is missing.
Exactly. The governor for Samburu, the court said that he does not access office. The court did not say that he steps aside.
But he will not access the premises.
Office, just like the governor for Kiambu. But the issue is, you're not accessing office, but you are in office. You are earning salary. In the Constitution, there are certain functions that the governor, deputy governor, cannot do as long as the governor is there. The governor is in, yes. So what are we facing at? Yeah. So if those are the issues that the BBI wants to address,
handle and address,
then I fully endorse it, and I'll be one of the people who will be on this studio and all over the country telling Kenya to support.
Absolutely. I like your points, and that's where I was going with our conversation. Corruption. This is something that is literally crippling us, and I like that Mr. Maliba actually pointed out that there are corruption shouldn't be taken lightly, because it seeps down to the cost of unga, as one of our regular panelists usually puts it. So it's quite a big problem. And if we're talking about solving Kenyans' problem, if we're talking about a people's BBI, then corruption should be at the topmost in handling our matters. And as the report comes out, I would hope that this is one of the solutions that it brings us, if it's promising if it's to be the silver bullet that it has been promised to be. Mr. Ogutu. Yeah,
it definitely is. You know, I mean, you'll recall that before the handshake, we didn't see this you know, high-level, you know, prosecution, so to speak, or CSs being indicted and things like that. But after the handshake, we've seen people like CS Rotich, you know, and other PS, very senior government officials.
How can we really attribute that to the handshake, though?
But I want to talk about, you know, you can't tackle corruption without the political goodwill.
Yes, yes.
But what I'm referring to here is actually now we have, with the handshake, now we have that political goodwill, and we are seeing some you know, fruits of it. And I think, like Mr. Hemba said here, and that has been captured so well in the BBI agenda. I would invite my friend here to read that concept very well. The 9-point agenda. Yeah. And understand it, you know, so well. It's a very detailed concept, you know, and so I think that we are headed toward a very positive direction as a country, and there's no need for us to or have a section of people, you know, being opposed to such a good initiative that is actually going to transform this country for the better.
Yeah. Mr. Maliba, corruption?
On corruption, first of all, I think Chapter 6 was overrated.
It's overrated?
Yes, Chapter 6 is overrated. Totally overrated. We cannot, as a people, live like demons and expect that in the morning there will be angels amongst us who show up and do everything well about us.
Yeah.
Chapter 6 is so much about us as a people and not about leadership. Because leaders are a representative sample of a people. And democracy is like milk. I keep on saying that a lot of times. The best substance in milk is normally the cream. It comes on top.
Yeah.
So, whereas Chapter 6 was an aspiration, but the Chapter 6 is very aspirational. Practically, it becomes very hard. That is why we have struggled with it for the last 10 years without necessarily finding appropriate enabling legislation to it. Because it's... in our typical manner of doing things, sometimes we want to use it against people for unfair advantage. So I'm just thinking we either rework Chapter 6 or expunge it altogether and have laws that are strong enough to have the worst amongst us become the leader and still have their hands tied that they cannot harm us.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'll tell you this free of charge, there is no politician who is good. Even Jesus in the good book says there is no man who is good. So the assumption that we are going to have some angels showing up, then we come up with this cult mentality. You know, the president used to say in his first term that his hands are tied because the laws do not allow him to do some other things. All of a sudden, he's doing all those things and he has not changed the law. That's why I still believe this business.
He's talking about political goodwill.
It's not, the political goodwill, and he started doing that when he decided that it was time for him to do that in his second term. In the first time, when he thought he would lose an election by being the president, the president the people want, he would play around. So I still think matters corruption. You don't need to change the constitution. We have got enough laws. What changed for people to start going home? What changed for people to start? There was no law that was changed. And that's why I still insist that for BBI, a lot of these things can be done administratively. There is enabling legislation. And we are just, I still, you know, whatever way we look at it, I know there are some challenges as a nation. But BBI is not that God-ordained solution to it. Anyone who says that BBI is the one and all for our problems is honestly selling snake oil. It's not just the best way to look at this thing.
We know what's happening in the United States, and if I would say that would be an example of how a Chapter 6 would work for a country. Should we model ourselves towards such countries?
Are we those people?
No, we are not.
You know, before we model ourselves on our people, is that the laws are made for us.
And we have our own unique situations.
We are not made for the law. The laws normally are made for us. And before we model around those issues, probably we need to start changing. Our political mobilization philosophy has always been around ethnicity.
Tribe. So
long as our political mobilization ethos and the philosophy is tribe-based, and it's not a bad thing. You know, like already you can actually realize that as a people, we behave sometimes like Americans. There's a joke in the US that you are born a Republican or a Democrat. The reasons to why you are either come later on in life. You already have got people in Kenya today who already have decided they are supporting BBI. They have not seen it. Those who support it are okay. They should support it even without seeing it. Those who ask questions should wait to read it. They should not oppose it without reading it. You know, that invalidates it. That if you support it, it is okay. You have not seen it, but you support it. We cannot be...
It's their democratic right.
It's their democratic right, yes, but then we cannot be bullied around in a situation where those who support can support without looking at it. Those who oppose should not oppose because they've not read it. It's as in it contradicts each other.
And to your point, we have Kapseret MP Oscar Sudi here saying, I've never bothered with the BBI. I've not been invited, but I will not go. I have been invited, but I will not go. I'll wait for those who will go to come with the report. And
so he said that he's been invited.
He's been invited, so he's not going. He's basically opposed to it.
He's opposed to it. And that is their democratic right.
No, I mean, what's it? I mean, we're running out of time, so I would like you to give your take briefly on the...
The truth of the matter is at the end of the day, the political class will have a bigger say on the issue of BBI. But that, as Ogutu said, that should not scare away anybody from having his or her own views, whether in support
on it or against.
But my only concern would be if in the run-up, if at all we'll head to that point, that Kenyans will be given several sets of questions if we are going for referendum, so that we are not given a chance the way they reject or accept the entire document. Let Kenyans be given a chance so that we can go point by point in terms of the form of questions, whether you are in support of this provision or not, and such like. Because there are certain things that really need to be looked at. The former Chief Justice Mutunga was on record saying that 14 days deciding a presidential election is not sufficient. The judges are drained. If there are those kind of provisions that are in the BBI and we are put in form of questions to the Kenyans at referendum, then we can be able to choose which one to support and which one not, as opposed to that time of banana and orange, where it was just yes or no. I mean, there's so much that will be lost. But as I'll still maintain that once the document is out there,
we should,
we'll read. We'll be able to speak our mind. I'll go back to the village and tell my people in Bungoma.
We shouldn't tell them, though. I feel like they should have that knowledge.
But how many of them will be able to read? You see, this document will not reach Kampondo Kaspu. We must go there and tell them that this is what it talks about.
But that really leaves a lot of room for manipulation. That's my problem with that, because the people need actually, maybe it should have more as form of civic education so that they can have representative telling them about it as is, as opposed to politicians. For example, Oscar Sudi saying he wants them to come back with it, and then maybe he'll read it, and maybe that's what he'll communicate. Now, those I assume those will be your closing remarks?
Yes, I agree that we need to have a lot of civic education so that it's a way, it's depoliticized at the moment, so that Kenya will also interact with the document through politically neutral grounds.
We can only pray. Mr. Ogutu, your closing remarks.
I think that's a very important aspect to it, having that civic education going, and I'm sure that will happen. But again, I also wanted to say that we should not treat this whole issue as if, we saw the BBI team actually going around and collecting the views of Kenyans, and it was in public places. People were invited. Nobody was barred from attending to air their views. So there was enough public participation, in my opinion, as is stipulated in the Constitution. And so, in my opinion, I think we should just support it. Those who want to wait and read it, and then make your own decision, because it's your democratic right. But again, I wanted to say that I think what we are going to see from today's launch actually is, I think from here we will see maybe some new political outfits or coalitions or whatever, alliances going forward ahead of 2022. And it's going to be a very, it's going to shape the 2022 politics.
Okay, Mr. Maliba.
My closing remarks is that BBI is actually welcome for dialogue. It's important that we have got a national dialogue. For me, it should be a platform for national dialogue. A few issues that point out issues around structures of governance, bringing in stuff like PM. But as you bring in the PM, somebody's already saying he wants to become the PM. If we're going to make the law with individuals in mind, it's going to be a challenge. Let them open it up so that it's a process for the people to engage. I am hoping that we will not have a referendum before 2022, because referenda have the tendency of dividing the nation and polarizing the country. I hope that if we ever have a referenda, it should be as we cast the election, or rather the ballot later on. Finally, I hope that BBI is going to has actually been made in a way that is palatable to everybody, so that it's not divisive, it does not appear like it's an agenda to railroad individuals to another end. So let it come. And to every Kenyan out there, it's important that we say, please do not support BBI before you read it. Read it, think about it, and then decide thereafter.
Absolutely. And just to echo what you said, we have head of the Anglican Church, Jackson Sapit.